Last year, we said no to traditional retirement and decided to live and work abroad instead. Today, we make our home on the Silver Coast of Portugal, and in this video, we're sharing our story of why we made this decision, the steps we took to get here, and advice for anyone who's thinking of doing the same.
If you're new to this channel, I'm Matt.
And I'm Dawn.
And we're the Unretirees, and this channel is about living abroad, remote work, and travel over 50. If you'd like to see more content like this, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and click the bell notification so that you'll be notified of any new videos.
So why are we making this video? Well, a few years ago, we faced a real crisis point. We're going to talk about that in this video. But we realized in that moment that we did not want to retire, but we also did not want to put off our dreams of living abroad and traveling the world.
So we began to look for stories like ours, for people who love the work that they do, people who wanted more freedom in the way that they work so they could work anywhere in the world, and people who wanted to be able to travel now while at the same time continuing to build a business or a career or their wealth.
We couldn't find any stories like ours. We watched a lot of YouTube videos. We saw stories of digital nomads, but most of them were significantly younger than we are. We saw videos of people our age who had moved abroad or traveled full-time, but they were already retired. And we saw stories of people who had retired early and moved abroad, but that wasn't really our story either. We really wanted to find something that we could relate to. Now, all of these stories were inspiring and informative, but they weren't relatable to our story. So we wanted to create this video to share our story with you and show you that if you dream of living and working abroad over 50, it is possible.
So here's our story, and let's begin our story in 2019. For me, I had a job that I liked, I loved, I was good at, and it was a stable job, and I envisioned myself being at this job for 10 or more years.
Now, I worked part-time for the same company. I also owned an online business that I felt like I could continue to do for as long as I wanted to.
So then COVID happened in 2020, and of course, it changed things for everyone. And it was a very rude awakening for us and for a lot of companies, of course, because for a lot of companies, including ours, we were faced with significant financial challenges. And it was really the first time that it made us think that it was a possibility that we could lose our jobs.
And if we had lost our jobs, we would have found ourselves at a real crossroads. On one hand, it meant that we would be back in the job market in our 50s, and on the other hand, it meant retirement.
So our situation was this. I mean, we had enough technically to retire, but we still had financial and professional goals that we felt like we still wanted to reach.
And for us, it wasn't just financial. I mean, we just mentally were not prepared to retire.
So let's talk about what happened. We didn't end up losing our jobs, but we realized that our jobs were perhaps not as secure as we imagined them to be. But more importantly, we realized that retirement wasn't for us. So we decided to say no to retirement. And that meant that we needed to create an unretirement plan.
The first thing that we did is we started to make some lists. Now, the very first list was a list of the things that we wanted to have more of in this next chapter of our life. Now, these were things like we knew we wanted to travel more. We knew we wanted to add and diversify our passive income streams. We knew we wanted to live at the beach. We knew we wanted to live in Europe. We knew we wanted to live somewhere where we could be outdoors in nature most of the year.
And then, of course, it was time to put together a list of things we wanted less of, right? So we wanted less congestion and less traffic. We wanted there to be less crime and to move somewhere that was more safe. And we wanted to live in a place that had a lower cost of living. And so now with these lists, the things that we wanted more of and the things we wanted less of, it allowed us to begin to put together our unretirement plan.
Now, it took a few years for us to put our plan in place. In year one, we bought a 2-unit income property and renovated it. We were living in New York during the pandemic. We bought a vacation home in Connecticut, renovated that, and I'll leave a link up here. We have a whole video.
So then in year two, or I should say by year two, we had decided where we wanted to move to was Portugal. And so in that year two, we ended up investigating and then ultimately buying a 2-unit property in Portugal that we then rented both units on Airbnb with the idea that ultimately when we decided to relocate to Portugal, we would just live in one of those 2 units.
Now, having vacation rentals in both the U.S. and Europe was an important part of our plan for a few reasons. Number one, it gave us the freedom to go back and forth. We have grown sons and a family back in the U.S., and so that was really important to us. The second thing is that it gave us the ability to rent them out or even do a house swap so that we could travel to other parts of the world less expensively. And finally, we were able to build equity in 2 very different markets.
So then in year 3, we began to explore other passive income ideas in addition to our short-term rental, our retirement funds, or our jobs. I mean, the idea here was to test out some things that begin to build additional revenue streams that would allow us to live off that revenue without having necessarily to touch our retirement funds.
By the end of year 3, a lot of things were in place. We had a couple of short-term rentals in the U.S. that were doing great. We had a couple short-term rentals in Portugal that were doing okay. And we had money that was starting to come in from some side projects. We also were still working in our job and business.
So it was time to make a decision about when was the right time to relocate to Portugal. I mean, we felt a strong pull toward Portugal. By this time, of course, we owned property in Portugal. We loved spending time in Portugal. It was our future. We could see our future being there in Portugal. At the same time, man, we didn't feel like we were done with our business or our career. We didn't feel like we were ready for retirement. We thought about this and discussed this for quite a long time.
Yeah, we really wrestled with that for many months, and we weren't really sure what the right answer was. And then one night, everything just kind of snapped. We were commuting between New York and Connecticut 1 day a week, and one night we were driving home. We're driving about 65 miles an hour on the freeway, and a car pulled out in front of us from a dead stop. And there wasn't anything we could do. We had a car next to us and a cement divider on the other side of that. And to this day, we are shocked that we did not end up in a fatal accident that night. But it was really a wake-up call that life is short and you don't know what's going to happen. And we decided that we just needed to take the leap. And we started planning our move to Portugal the very next day. So the next question was, well, what do we do about work? I had an online business that I could run from anywhere, so that part was easy.
But for my full-time job and Dawn's part-time job for this organization, so we needed to have a conversation with our boss about our jobs. Now, we offered and wanted to continue to work for the company and to do so from Portugal. And we understood if that wasn't going to work for him. In fact, we were willing to give up our jobs if need be in order to make this move happen. Mm-hmm. Now, fortunately, our boss, well, he wasn't thrilled with the idea of it. He allowed us to continue to work and to do so from Portugal. Understand that post-COVID, we had given up our office. And so therefore, everybody was working remotely anyway. We had staff members not only in New York, but also in Europe and in Africa. And so for most of our activities, they were all taking place on Zoom anyway. Mm-hmm. So the fact that we were no longer in person in the New York area only meant that occasionally there would be some in-person meetings that we would not be able to be at.
So in October of 2023, we made the move, and now we live and work on the Silver Coast of Portugal. Now, in some ways, nothing has really changed. We still do the same work. We show up to the same meetings. Again, everything is on Zoom, but the rhythm of our life has changed considerably. Now, we keep U.S. hours from Portugal. And so what that means is that we work from the afternoon into the evening, essentially like a swing shift. Mm-hmm. And that means that we have our entire mornings to ourselves to go for a walk or get in a workout or work on a side project, whatever it is that we want to do.
But it also gives us more freedom to travel to great destinations around Europe. I mean, normally we are working from here in Portugal, but next month we're going to be spending a couple of weeks in the south of France. But we're going to be working. We're going to be working remotely. We're going to be working U.S. hours, so it's not going to have an impact on our work. But all morning long, we're going to be able to enjoy hiking and checking out and exploring the south of France. Be able to do that on the weekends as well, and then put a day in of work, and then have a late dinner because it's Europe.
So now that we're here, how do we feel about our future in this next chapter of our life? There's so many new things to see and do here. And that doesn't mean that there isn't plenty to see and do in the US. There is. But I just feel like our lives feel much more expansive than they did when we first started this process.
But we also have a clearer picture. I mean, we got clearer about the things that were important to us, the things we wanted more of and the things that we wanted less of. And we put together this unretirement plan. And then we took action on that plan, and we continue to work that plan. Now, look, no one knows what your future holds or our future holds, but having a plan in place has allowed us to have a compass for the decisions that we make. Allows us to make decisions that are not based out of fear or reacting to something, but allows us to make decisions with intentionality and with optimism as we think about this next chapter of our life. So what advice would you give to somebody who was in our situation, say 5 years ago, thinking about their unretirement plan?
First and foremost, I would say to make a plan. Start with a list of everything that you want more of in this next chapter of your life. And then write a list of all of the things that you want less of. Listen, this is your story and you have the pen. Write a chapter that you are absolutely going to love.
So the next step is research, research, research. And we say this in just about every video because it's really true. Now, we've created a playlist that includes topics like the cost of moving to Portugal, getting a visa in Portugal, and looking for remote work. Now, most of our content is specific to Portugal, but there is plenty of content about whatever country you would be thinking about moving to online.
The other thing that we would say is to ask really good questions. You know, if we were looking at our life 5 years ago, where we are right now would have seemed absolutely impossible. But we got in the habit of asking ourselves high quality questions. I love the quote that says, if you want a better answer, ask a better question. And so for us, what that looked like is instead of asking, what on earth are we going to do? We asked, what is it that we want? And instead of saying, I don't know how this could possibly work for us, we asked, well, how could this work for us?
And finally, just start. I mean, there is a lot of power in taking that first step. Now, you don't need to be at a crisis point in order to actually start this plan. But if you are at a crisis point, obviously, it's not too late to get started with your unretirement plan. Now, it may start with just some simple steps. Maybe it's watching videos, our videos or other videos about making a move to the country that you are thinking about. Maybe it's starting to have a long-term conversation with your boss about what that could look like in the future and if he or she would be open to it. And you may be surprised, he or she may be open to it. If needed, you may want to start to look for a remote job, and we have a video about that too. And you may want to subscribe to our channel and other channels to get some additional information about planning your unretirement. So if you've got any other questions, be sure to drop them in the comments below.
If you want to hear more about our experience in our first 6 months living in Portugal, watch this video. Click the bell.
All right. Three. 3, 2, 1. So we began to look for stories. Financial, even our personal or professional goals.